Hi, welcome to Scofield Farm. I'm Carice, and today I'm very excited to share my very favorite tomatoes with you and let you know what tomatoes we'll be growing in our 2024 summer garden. I have been anticipating this video and getting ready for it. It's gonna be a long one, so go ahead and grab yourself a cup of coffee or your favorite hot drink. Get a notepad and a pen because you might want to take notes. There might be some varieties that I mentioned that you're not familiar with that you still have time to look up the seeds in order for your own garden plans. And also feel free to save this video to share it with others that love growing tomatoes. I have been growing tomatoes for 15 summer gardens, and I have had a lot that I've tried, a lot of successes, a lot of failures, and I'm excited to share them with you because tomatoes are one of my very favorite things to grow. They get prime real estate in my garden, right there with the peppers, which if you've been around here very long, you know I love peppers. I'm growing over 30 varieties in my garden, and we have already started peppers in January. There's a couple videos that I've made that you might want to check out about peppers, how I planted them, how we potted them up, how much my family has helped me. I have videos from last year about peppers. Peppers and tomatoes are my very favorite things in my summer garden. Well, besides flowers, but we'll talk about that later. You hang on till the end of this video. I am going to let you know my very top choices if I have to narrow all of them down. And if you know me in person or have been around my channel very long, you know that I am terrible at picking favorites. Now, for those of you new here who may have missed the last couple months of my life, I had shoulder surgery in January. I had a car accident in 2022 where my shoulder would not quite heal and stabilize. So I had to have surgery, and this huge immobilizing brace really gets in the way of me homesteading and gardening. We have a little family farm up in Northern California in Shasta County, Zone 9B, where we have chickens, we keep bees, we have a dog. I have 7 kids and a wonderful husband who, as I said, is super supportive of all of my farm life dreams. We have a big garden and a lot of fruit trees, and we love to share it with you guys. The gardening goals and dreams and the homesteading work is not just me and my husband. We do things together as a family. We all pitch in, we all work together, and this is how we make things work. This is just how we go about life in our family. We like to share the things we do with our kids and have them involved and teach them skills and things that they're going to use the rest of their life. Now, most people get into gardening because they tasted that one homegrown tomato flavor and they were hooked. When I very first started veggie gardening, my sister-in-law lived down the street from us, and she offered me space in her backyard to start growing veggies. I already had herbs on my front porch. That's something I think every beginner should start with, are herbs. But I really wanted to do a vegetable garden, and our property in our little suburban neighborhood was completely shaded by 2 giant oak trees that helped our electricity bills, but they made it impossible to grow things like tomatoes that need 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight a day. So when she offered, I immediately called my friend Robin, who I call Tomato Queen, and asked her if I could buy a few of her starts so I could try some special heirloom varieties. I knew that she was all into heirlooms, and I love the flavor of heirlooms at the grocery store. But like many of you, I felt guilty spending $6 a pound on tomatoes just because they were colorful and beautiful. I knew that was the very first thing I wanted to try to grow in my garden. And guys, I will tell you 2 tomato varieties that I grew in that very first garden that I have been hooked to for years, and they are some of my very favorites. Now today we're going to talk about the difference between heirloom, open pollinated, and hybrid tomatoes. We're also going to talk about the difference between indeterminate and determinate tomatoes. I'm going to share with you when you should start your tomatoes inside if you're growing from seed. You don't want to start them too early, and you don't want to start them too late. And I'm also going to talk about, should you start from seed, or should you buy starts from a nursery or a friend, a local gardener, or maybe even a big box store? I want to go over all of these things tomatoes and then also share with you the varieties that we are going to give room to in our garden, because we can't grow everything. Nobody can grow everything, especially when you have as many tomato seeds as I do. You got to decide and choose which ones get space and which ones are going to have to wait. First, let's talk about the tomatoes that will not be in my garden this year. Some of them is because they didn't do well for me, and others I just simply don't have room for this year. So I have to rotate some of the heirloom varieties so I can taste different things, different seasons. One tomato that will not be in my garden this year are the Amish paste tomatoes. I've heard wonderful things about these from other Zone 9 gardeners, but they did not do well in my garden, so I am not giving them room. Another one that I've actually liked in the past that will not be in my garden are Sunrise Bumblebee. Sunrise Bumblebee are great, but I have to narrow down the amount of cherry tomatoes I'm growing, and so these we're going to take a skip on this year. Maybe they'll show back up next year. I'm not sure. Emerald apple, I am not growing this year. I did not have a lot of success with them. I might try them again in the future, but I really want to try out some other new varieties, so these are going to be on hold. Costoludo Genovese, I really liked these, but I'm going to grow a different type of variety that are very similar to these. So these are going to wait for later. They were very productive, but I wanted to give their space to a new tomato to me to try that's very similar and see how that one does. I'm also not going to grow pink brandywine because I'm going to grow a regular brandywine, and I only have room for so much of each type of variety, so these are going to wait. I have a mini orange tomato and a taxi tomato that I got from a local gardener that I really liked, but it felt like last year both of them died early. I don't know if it was from disease. I don't know if it was the way I had them planted, but I felt like they took up garden space and didn't pay off fully. So those are also, we're going to take a pause on. I'm keeping the seeds. Maybe I'll grow them later, maybe I won't. Another very popular variety that won't be in my garden this year is San Marzano. San Marzano is often said to be the best paste tomato variety, and some people argue that it only is considered San Marzano if it was grown in a certain region of Italy, and that having seeds and growing it in a California garden don't actually count. Guys, I have tried to grow San Marzano quite a few years and have only met failure. They're the only tomato that I get blossom end rot with, even when tomatoes in the same bed right next to it do not get the blossom end rot. I've never had them be very fruitful, and I've had them sometimes die from a disease or some sort of wilt. I don't know. I know they're probably amazing. I know their flavor's great, but they're not going to get space in my garden because they end up being a disappointment every year. And I want you to know that if there is a tomato that so many people love and it doesn't do well for you, you don't have to keep growing it. Find something that does well in your garden, in your climate, in your area. We all live in very different places. Some of us get more rain, some of us have more heat, some of us have really long growing seasons, and others have really short growing seasons. And we're going to have different varieties that do well at different times, different places, and that is totally okay. Remember, we don't all have to be the same. Now that we've talked about what won't be in my garden, I want to talk about what will be in my garden. I'm going to start with paste tomatoes because last year was the year of me discovering which paste tomatoes will do well in my own garden, in my climate, in my Zone 9B area, which you might have it different, as I said. If you're in Zone 3, Zone 4, Zone 5, maybe you're even in Zone 10, you will have different things that do well for you. But these 3 varieties I've narrowed down to be winners in my garden. They were great producers. We are able to can them, freeze them, do so much, eat tons of them fresh. These are the ones that will for sure be in my garden as the paste tomato varieties. And I have 3 I'm going to share with you. The first one is La Roma 3. I got this tomato from Seeds and Such, and this one came from the recommendation of my friend Robin, who lives about 2 miles from me outside of second sunniest city in the country, by the way. So we get a lot of sunshine here, very long growing season. It's called La Roma. It is a hybrid. It is a determinate tomato, and it did so well for me last year. These were large paste tomatoes. Now, determinate and indeterminate, the difference is determinate tomatoes have a certain amount of tomatoes they're going to produce in their lifetime. It is a determined amount. Indeterminate will produce and produce and produce. They'll grow and grow and grow, and they're considered a indeterminate amount. Usually determinate stays smaller. Indeterminates usually grow bigger. And hybrids just mean that two different tomatoes were bred together to create something maybe disease resistant, maybe it is tolerant of heat, maybe it is a high producer. It takes the best qualities from one tomato, mixes it with the best qualities of another tomato. You can think of it kind of like dog breeding. We own a golden doodle. Its mom was a golden retriever. Its dad was a medium poodle. They bred them together and hopefully got the best traits of each breed. I can tell you that we did get some negative traits from the poodle, the little bit of anxiousness. That's another story for another day. All I want to emphasize there is hybrids are not GMO. Hybrids are like crossing a dog, getting the best trait from one dog, the best trait from a different dog, breeding them together. That's all they do with tomatoes. Guys, honestly, there are hybrids that happen in our garden all the time from pollinators and wind. If I save tomato seeds from tomatoes grown in close proximity from two different varieties, I have a high chance of having a hybrid form naturally from those tomatoes in the seeds I save. And the next year, my tomato seeds may not be true to either tomato type. They may be a whole different type of tomato that's got similar things from different tomatoes. So when you see the word hybrid, do not be afraid. Hybrid is not GMO. Now, up until now, I could guarantee you that home gardeners are not going to be sold GMO tomatoes. We will talk about that in a minute because that's a whole new subject that just changed. I just saw the article this week. Maybe it's been around for a while, but I did not know that till this week that there is a possibility of GMO tomato. But hybrid is not GMO. So rest assured, if you buy a hybrid, you are not buying GMO. You're just buying something that had two tomatoes that crossed. In my experience, all three paste tomatoes, they kept producing till the very end of our long season. We had trays and buckets of green tomatoes that we harvested the day before our first frost, and most of those were the paste tomatoes. So even though they're considered determinates, we found them to be very high producers and to produce for a very long time. The other two paste tomatoes that we loved, that we tried, you might be surprised, but one was the standard Roma tomato. Somebody sent me these from a seed exchange group that I'm a part of on Instagram, and I really liked them. They are open pollinated. They are not a hybrid, but they are a determinate. So the difference is open pollinated, they might be an heirloom. Heirloom means they've been along for a really long time. They might be just a stabilized hybrid that now is its own breed. And if you collect seeds from it, and obviously you grow them far enough from other varieties, they will be true to the mother plant. The other one I really liked is Martinez Roma. Martinez Roma is a determinate, but it was open pollinated. I could save seeds that would be true from it. I don't have to keep buying seeds from it. One thing about hybrids that's a negative is that you have to buy seeds again if you want them to be those same qualities that the mother plant had. You could save seeds from them. They are not like sterile, but they will probably be more like one parent or the other parent, whatever two types of tomatoes they were bred together. They won't be true and stabilized to the plant that you originally grew. These three were great. I'm telling you, I got so many tomatoes. I could do a whole video on them. You guys don't want to sit and just hear about 3 tomatoes. So we're going to move on, but write that down if you're looking for a good paste tomato. These 3 I can highly recommend. They did great in my garden. I will for sure be growing them again. Since I mentioned the whole GMO issue, I will just clue you in real fast and then I'll put a link to the article in the description below so you can check it out further. But recently it came out on the news that there was a GMO tomato that is going to be marketed to home gardeners. This is new. This hasn't happened before. They took some of the DNA from purple snapdragons and they spliced it into the DNA of the tomato to make a bright purple tomato with purple flesh. This was genetically modified. Hybrids are not genetically modified. Remember, hybrids occur in nature naturally. but this is the first GMO seed of tomato that is marketed to home gardeners. We can have a whole discussion later about GMO, but I'm just letting you know, please watch out for it. Please buy tomato seeds from companies that are committed to not sell GMO tomatoes, to not sell GMO vegetables to home gardeners. You know, I'm uncomfortable with it. I have my own thoughts. I don't know what yours are. We can agree to disagree, that's fine, but I will not be trying these GMO tomatoes. I love purple varieties. I will talk about purple varieties, but I like purple varieties that are occurring naturally. Does that make sense? Okay, let's move on. Just wanted to mention that. The article will be below. You can look into that yourself, and we can even discuss it in the comments. That's totally fine, but I'm gonna hold off on those personally. The next type of tomato I would like to talk to you about are cherry tomatoes. Now you've got to decide for yourself if you're going to include cherry tomatoes into your home garden. Some people love them. Some people feel like they took up too much room. They didn't know what to do with all the tomatoes. They wish they had larger slicers or more tomatoes to can. But for us having 7 kids, and we have, you know, kind of some grown-up children as well, cherry tomatoes always will have a place in our garden because they are our favorite snacking tomato. We make homemade hummus, which I really should make a video about because we're rather known around here for our really good tasting hummus. We've got some secret ingredients we put in there to make it creamy and delicious. I'll make a video about that for you down the road. But cherry tomatoes are one of my favorite things to dip into hummus. I've also found my kid that doesn't love gardening as much out there picking tomatoes and just eating them right off the vine, and he always goes for the cherry tomatoes. So I like to grow lots of colors, lots of flavors, lots of varieties of cherry tomatoes. I personally have my very favorite cherry tomato, which I'll mention to you. But I grow quite a few so that we'll have a pretty bowl of tomatoes on the counter so my kids can taste the differences. We can have all sorts of flavors, all sorts of variety. My kids actually have a different favorite than I do. So I'll also let you know that too. But these are ones that we have grown and we have loved. And there's one cherry tomato that's new to us that I am trying in my garden this year. The first one I want to mention, I got from Baker's Creek, Barry's Crazy Cherries. This is a favorite with my kids. They absolutely love them because they have clusters of 40 to 60 cherry tomatoes on just one cluster alone. This variety is packed full of fruit. So if you have little kids or big kids who end up in the garden eating all the cherry tomatoes before any can come in the house, this variety will ensure that you have some make it inside because it is just so prolific. It's a great one, a very mild flavor. Barry's Crazy Cherries will probably be in our garden forever. Black cherry is another favorite. We've grown black cherry since the very beginning of gardening. It is an heirloom variety. It's got a nice, warm, it's not overly sweet, but it's very tomatoey flavor. And I've actually saved seeds from this as well, being an heirloom tomato, being one of my son's very favorite tomatoes. And I'd recommend picking these when they get darker and then they get almost like redder. There's a whole variety of places that you can pick tomatoes, but usually I do the squeeze test. I'll squeeze it, see how much give there is. Cherry tomatoes are a little harder to tell with the squeeze test than larger tomatoes, but when they get that nice darkened color and they're really ready to go, they will be so good in the sunshine right off of the vine. They are fantastic tomato. Here is a hybrid. And this one is a crazy producer as well. I can't save seed from it and have them be true, but I will keep buying the seeds because it is so productive and it's that classic cherry tomato flavor. Super Sweet 100. Very prolific, very tasty. I know people who've grown several of these and felt like they were swamped in tomatoes because they're so productive. This is a good one to have in your garden. We got it at a local nursery from Lake Valley Seed. You can find it a lot of different places. It's a really great one. Will always be in my garden. A new to me last year variety was blue cream berries. I tried this out. I had to experiment with the timing of when to pick it because I wasn't quite sure which color it was when it was at its prime. This really dark golden color with the purple shoulders, that's the best time to pick it. It will be kind of like purpley blue on top and a whitish green. those aren't quite ready. The more golden it gets, the more creamy it is. It's more of a subtle flavor. It doesn't like hit you in the face with sweetness, but it's very good, and I found it to be very productive. I'm gonna grow it again this year. Okay guys, I'm gonna tell you the new tomato to me. It's not actually new tomato, just new to my garden, and then I'll tell you my very favorite cherry tomato. I just have to take a second and anticipate the glory of the flavor. Oh my gosh, guys. Okay, let's do the new one first. People who know me would let you know that this drama right here, this is tried and true. I am a little bit dramatic about my food. You call me a foodie or you call me eccentric. I think probably both fit. And I'm okay with it because that is how much I enjoy this tomato. But first, the new one. Okay, the new one is red pear. Someone shared these seeds with me. Guys, I know red pear, you probably get it in your supermarket. You can get it at farmer's market, but I've actually never grown it in my home garden. And I have memories of my 18-year-old boy when he was like 2 years old, taking him down to farmer's market at this music fest in the city that we live outside of now. They had a downtown music fest on Thursday nights, and it was like totally great. And they had this farmer's market street set up where they coned off the street, and I would buy bags full of yellow and red pear tomatoes, and I just give him a bag in the back seat and he would eat the whole bag before we got home. And it's just such a good memory that I want to have them in my garden. I don't know, call me nostalgic, call me sentimental, but I'm literally just growing them for the memory. Yes, they get a spot because my little boy is grown up. All right, now we're going to talk about my favorite, you guys. Sun gold. Sun gold is like pure sugar sunshine melting into my mouth. It is the sweetest tomato I have ever tasted in my entire life, and the first one to be ripe in my garden every single year without exception. I have bought it from a couple different places. I bought it from Botanical Interest before. The most recent ones I bought from Seeds and Such. Several places sell it. It is a hybrid, so it does not save true to the mother plant. You do have to keep buying the seeds, but I'm telling you guys, this one is so worth it. Now, I know there's debate out there about sun sugar and sun gold and which one's sweeter, which one's better. I did a side-by-side comparison. I grew them both in my garden one year. Guys, I couldn't tell a difference. I know people say they can tell a difference. I could not tell a difference, and I am majorly sold on flavor. So, if you can't find sun gold, but you can find sun sugar, it is a worthy substitute. Whichever one you get, be sure to include it in your garden. You will thank me. You will thank me, I promise. I just can't wait. I can't wait. It's gonna be so good. All the effort of growing tomatoes for that flavor of the sun gold. I've got to show you a clip of my mother-in-law trying sun gold in my garden last year for the first time. They were in town from Guatemala, and they helped us do the big picking of our garden the afternoon before frost was coming. And guys, this was not staged. This was totally genuine. She had never tasted it before, and tasting it in the heat and having it I don't know what to say, but something about how hot it gets in our summer makes our tomatoes that much sweeter.
It has to be really orange.
Really orange. Get the orangest sun gold you can find, girls.
Well, here's the one.
Okay, let's see. This is document the deliciousness, because it's like sugar.
Like that.
It's seriously like sugar. It's so good.
Like store-bought tomatoes.
Nothing. That's why we're addicted
goodness.
to them. We're addicted.
Okay.
You guys, I love sharing the love of good homegrown food with people. If there's one thing that I could do with this channel, I'd love to inspire you to grow your own food. I'd love to inspire you to start with something. And I've said this a lot of times. I think that beginners often should start with herbs because they're simple and easy to grow in containers, but also get a container. Put a pot of cherry tomatoes. You can get a start. You can grow it from seed. Listen, growing from seed does not make you a legit gardener. You can be a legit gardener and you can buy starts. I want to just remove that guilt, remove that burden off your shoulders. I like to grow from seed because I feel like it's money saving. I feel like I can get my hands on a wider range of varieties. But honestly, I have someone in my life like Robin who already grows lots of varieties. So if for some reason I couldn't start them from seed, I could get those really special varieties from my friend, a local gardener. Maybe you have a local gardener who's growing a lot of fun varieties. Ask them if they have extras that they can sell. Lots of local nurseries will have some really quality starts. It's okay to go buy starts from them. It doesn't make you any less of a gardener. I grew tomatoes only from starts for years and years and years. And it was so helpful for me to give a few bucks per start to a friend to pay them for their time, you know, their efforts of watering them, hardening them off, using their electricity. It was worth it to me. And as I was able to expand, I started growing from seed. But I just want to tell you right now, no pressure to grow from seed just because I do. You are a gardener because you are growing food for yourself and your family, and you are doing something to make the supply chain shorter. You can walk in your backyard and eat fresh food. You don't have to rely on a grocery store that could end up with empty shelves, just like we saw in 2020. We have no guarantee, guys. We're so used to food always being available year-round, trucked in from faraway places, but we're not always guaranteed. It's worth it to learn to grow your own food. I'm gonna get off my soapbox for a second, get back to tomatoes, but I just want to share with you my passion for why I feel like it's worth teaching people how to grow, sharing my experience, showing how to involve your kids in growing their own food. I feel like it's a lost art. Our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our great-great-grandparents did this, but a lot of us didn't grow up doing this ourselves. But it's okay to start now. It's okay to change the culture of your family now and change the course to go back to the things that were valuable in the past that we've lost. We've lost connection with our food. We've lost connection with our soil, but it's not too late to get that back. Okay, guys, back to tomatoes. Thank you for letting me share my passion with you. It really matters to me because I feel it deeply. I feel a lot of things deeply, but I feel deeply that it's worth it to try. Even if you fail, it's worth it to try. All right, let's get back to topic. I want to apologize. I am a little bit ADHD and I kind of go on like the bunny trail. Oh, look, squirrel. But really, these are things I'm passionate about and I like to share my passions. And I would love for you to share your passions in the comment. Is there a tomato variety you love? Why did you get into tomato gardening? Why do you grow tomatoes? Do you have any questions about tomatoes? I would love to dialogue with you because it's fun to share passions with other people. And I'd like to grow a community. I don't want to just talk at you. I'd like to dialogue with you. So show up in the comments. Let me know what you think about tomatoes, which ones you might grow. If there's any that I share today that you want to try, I'd love to hear if we could grow them together this year. It'd be neat to swap stories. Also, could you take a second to like this video? It helps get my videos in front of more people who might be interested in growing their own food, who might be interested in how to involve their family and get back to homesteading roots that maybe other generations before them did, but they didn't get to do that much growing up and they're learning and starting a new culture. I'd like to expand our communities. Take a second to like it. You can save my videos, share my videos, and you can follow along if you'd like. If this is a type of content you like, press subscribe. You can even do the little bell and it will alert you of all of my new videos so that as we grow tomatoes this year and as I share more and more about our gardening and how the tomatoes do in each step of the way, you won't miss any of those videos and we can go together on this journey. The next tomatoes I'm going to share about are mostly heirloom tomatoes because as I said before, one of the things that got me into gardening was the guilt of spending that much money on heirloom tomatoes at the grocery store or at farmer's market, knowing that if I grew them at home myself, I could explore and try these wonderful flavors without spending $6, $7, $8 a pound at the grocery store. And if you get a good size heirloom tomato, it can be a half pound to a pound and a half all by itself. That's a really expensive tomato. So this is part of why I'm so excited about growing at home, is growing delicious, unusual colors and flavors that save so much money, even for every tomato that you eat. We're gonna start with orange yellow varieties because I really, really like orange yellow varieties. The first one is actually not an heirloom I'm gonna share with you, It's a hybrid that marries a lot of my favorite things about different orange heirlooms. It's called Chef's Choice Orange. I love this tomato. It's a very reliable producer. It tastes similar to an Amana orange, and that's because an Amana orange is one of the parents that it was bred with, but it's more, I think it's more heat tolerant and more reliable, more disease tolerant than Amana orange, but it still has that wonderful flavor. Chef's Choice Orange is a great hybrid that is orange. I got it from Seeds and Such. You can get it several different places. The next one is actually the Amana Orange. I do grow Amana Orange. I got these from my gardener. And one thing I love about Amana Orange is it is sweet, it is tangy, it is acidic. It is so good to chop up and put in a salad. I often will make salsas with all orange tomatoes. So my salsa's not that classic red color. It's kind of a yellowy orange color with that cilantro in it and different colors of peppers. It's fun, it's different, it's bright flavored, it's fruity. That's one thing I love about orange tomatoes is the fruitiness and the acidity. It's just, so good. Amana Orange is a really good one. I also am giving room to Kellogg's Breakfast. This is one of the first tomatoes I ever grew. Very good, very large, great on a tomato sandwich, great on a burger. It is, super, super sweet. And often the tomatoes are bigger than a pound each. So this is a beautiful variety to include in the garden. These are from Baker's Creek, but you can get them a lot of places. Next one is one I didn't have in my garden last year. I don't know how I missed it, but it's called Dr. White's Yellow. And my friend Robin and I, we did a tomato tasting party a couple of years ago in July around her birthday. We had a barbecue and we each put out on a plate our favorite tomatoes from our garden. And we sliced them open and we compared flavors. And this one was one of our winning for flavors, Dr. White's. It is so good. They are large. They're like 1 pound a piece fruit. They're a smooth texture. They're very solid. They're tropical. They yield well. And this is a great beefsteak type tomato. If you haven't tried it, check that one out. Next, we're going to move to an unusual tomato that I found. It's an open pollinated. I don't think it's got heirloom status yet, but it will save true to the plant. Brad's Atomic Grape. They look so psychedelic, so hippie-like, you know. They're all different colors. It took me a while to figure out how to know when this one was ripe because it was so colorful. It seemed like the oranger, more red that the tones changed to, and I squeezed it and it was nice and soft. That's when I picked it. And these guys, I love these in salsa. I love these I put them in stews, in chilies, in lentil soup. I eat them plain with just salt on them. They are really, really good tomato. And I know some people, they're hit and miss for, but for me, every year I've grown them, they've been one of our favorites in the garden. So this one always has a place in my garden. I really, really like it. Okay. We're going to move on to purple type varieties. I grow a lot of golds and oranges. I grow a lot of purple tomatoes. And I don't know, I told you guys, I love color. I'm just like my Nana. My Nana passed away in May and she was 97 years old. She was Wintu, which is the local native tribe to Shasta County. And she loved color. She loved to crochet and she'd make these blankets that were all different rainbow colors. And the way she would dress in her sweaters and stuff, they were all bright and colorful and cheery. And so when I look out in my garden and I see all the variety of color, it makes me just feel a warmth, a special memory of my Nana and feel like connected to her and the ways that I'm like her. And I love all the colors. So the purples, we're going to Cherokee Purple Tomato. I got these from Redwood Seed and these are one I've grown for years and years. They're an heirloom, they're an indeterminate, which means they will keep producing and keep growing all season long. They are delicious. They're like, how do I describe them? They're savory, they're sweet. I use these often in making a tomato caprese salad where I buy those little round mozzarella balls at Costco. I harvest sweet basil or Emily basil, any type of Italian basil. I'll harvest the leaves, I'll chop these up, I'll drizzle some balsamic vinegar, salt them, and just eat them. And that's like my go-to lunch in the summer. These are really good in that. Cherokee purple, if you haven't tried it, you should look that one up. Okay, Paul Robeson. Remember I talked about that tomato testing party? This was also one of the winners. Amazing flavor. It's so good. It was named after a famous opera singer. How random is that? I got it from Baker's Creek. They're about a ½ pound fruit. Very good, very worth trying. If you haven't tried, write this one down. They've got kind of a smoky, sweet flavor. They're great. They're great. Okay, black creme. One of the very first tomatoes I ever grew, literally the first tomatoes in my very first vegetable garden of my own. They are not very productive for me in my garden, yet I always give them space because I absolutely love their flavor. I don't even know how to describe it. It is something I could not purchase at any store. I couldn't. They have this homegrown flavor that is so unique to them, and I look forward to every year, and I never regret it. I always think, wow, they're not producing for me. They produce more in the fall when our temps kind of start to mellow back down to the 90s. I know that's odd, but that's our falls. Our summers are like 105 to 115 for reals. But in the fall, when it gets to the 90s, these start producing, and I always think, I don't regret it. I'm so glad I gave a space to these. Got them from M.I. Gardener, but I'm sure you can get them other places. They're low acid. If you have problems with acidity of tomatoes, this might be one you try because it's not very acidic. It's smoky, it's warm, it's got this mixed sweetness. Must try guys. This tomato I first got from Seed Wish Wednesday on Instagram. It's a seed exchange thing that every Wednesday they have a group. You can look it up by the hashtag and you can request tomatoes. You can request anything, flowers, veggies, herbs, and people like to trade, and it's really cool. Well, I liked it so much, I went ahead and bought another pack of seeds. It's called Sart Alois. It's got the purple shoulders. It's got the nice yellow flesh. It's bursting with flavor. It's super good. It's like tropical. It's got very high antioxidants. I really like it. It's very, very pretty in the garden as well. I always go for beauty and flavor mixed together. Beautiful tomato, wonderful flavor. Another purple variety. I told you I really like purple varieties. Black Beauty. This is the most purple, darkest, deepest tomato I think there is. It is almost black when it's unripe. It's so dark. When it's ripe, it lightens up to kind of, the bottom has got a reddish color to it. So don't pick it when it's solid purple. Wait till it's got the nice squeeze and it's got reddish bottom to it. It is really, really good. It is really delicious. I like to put these on burgers, on sandwiches. We even use our heirloom tomatoes in salsas. We freeze them and use them all winter long so we get to keep that yummy flavor. This is a great one, and it's been in my garden for probably a decade. We really like this one. We are going to go on to the red varieties. I am talking so fast, need to take a breath. Trip L crop. I want to say triple, but it's Trip L crop. I tried this last year. I don't feel like it got a fair shot in my garden because the bed it was in needed to be amended. So I'm going to try it again. This is supposed to be very big fruit, clusters of 3 to 5. It's got a great reputation. It's an heirloom. It's supposed to be insanely productive. That's why I feel like it didn't get a fair shot. I'm going to try it again. I do love the classic red flavor. As much as I like all the different varieties, I do have to have classic red represented in my garden. So I'm going to try this one again and see how it goes. This is the pleated tomato I decided to do. Instead of the Costaludo Genovese, we're going to do Zapotec pleated. And the reason why is this one is an heirloom from Mexico that was grown by indigenous people. And because I'm indigenous, I thought it'd be kind of fun to have that connection. So we're gonna try this. I anticipate this one being good for canning and good for salsas, and I can't wait to try it. The classic, Brandywine. Brandywine tomatoes have a very different look of their leaves, and that's good to know. They kind of look more like a potato leaf. They are really good. For me, I felt like it was more susceptible to like disease, blight, bugs. I kept the bottom of the tomato heavily pruned, but I got some really delicious tomatoes from this last year. the flavor is worth it. It's worth the struggle that this tomato is a little more finicky to have that really delicious flavor. So Brandywine, it's a classic. It's an heirloom. It's really, really good. This one, honestly, this is more of a orange than a red. I put it in my red group, but it's terracotta, and it's actually got that terracotta pot color to it. It's like a reddish orange. It is quite delicious. It is an amazing slicer. We've grown it for about 4 or 5 years, and I really like it. I learned about it first from my friend Robin, bought starts from her, then added it to my seed collection. It is delicious. If you like really warm, tasty, different kind of tomatoes, it seems pretty reliable in my garden too, even with our heat. So I like this one. This one's gonna keep coming back. Green zebra. You gotta have something different. You gotta have something unusual and green. Green zebra is it for us. We liked it last year. It's like yellow and green stripes when it's ripe. It's bright. It's a little bit of a sharp flavor. They're not very big. They're only like 3-ounce fruits. So they're kind of small, bigger than a cherry, smaller than a paste. They are very delicious though. This is a fun one. Jet Setter. Jet Setter is one of the only hybrids that I grow in like beefsteak-ish size. I mentioned Chef's Choice Orange. Jet Setter is very reliable as a producer. It's good for sauces. It's good to freeze. We freeze these. We use them all winter. They really are productive. So when sometimes my heirlooms are not producing enough because of our extreme heat, I can rely on having something like this there to make sure that we're getting a steady flow of tomatoes ripening. Jet Setter is very steady, very reliable. They had great germination, so they're coming back. This is a new to me one. It's called Mortgage Lifter, and it's supposed to be really, really good. Like someone paid off their house with them or something. They can be 2 pounds a piece. There's all sorts of folklore about them, but that's part of what's fun about growing heirloom tomatoes is you hear all the fun stories and it makes them attractive to try. So we're gonna try it out. It looks good, a classic red. It looks delicious, and I hope we get a really, really heavy one. I know my kids would have fun weighing a huge tomato. Tomatillos are coming back. They're not technically a tomato, but they're relatives. They did terrible for me last year. Terrible. And we love salsa verde. My husband grew up in Guatemala. He loves salsa verde. And I really wanted to make it, but they did so bad. So we're gonna try it again. You have to have at least 2 in your garden. They will not produce as a single plant. I had 3 and I still had problems. I mean, they grew huge, but were just fruitless. So they finally lost their spot in my garden. I planted something else in their place. But we are gonna try again because salsa verde is really fun homemade, and like a green enchilada sauce, ooh, that sounds so good. This is gonna get another go in my garden. Now for our area, our zip code, our last frost date is actually the middle of March. I have not seen that to actually be true in my own experience yet. We usually get a frost sometime in April, and I don't know if that's just because the property I live on is a slightly colder microclimate, or if those averages need to be updated with how temperatures have been in the last several years. I do not plan on planting out tomatoes till mid to late April, even if my last average frost date is the middle of March. The reason why is I could go by that date, look at the 10-day forecast, and take a risk. But chances are I'm going to be running out there to throw frost covers, buckets, blankets, different protection over my tomatoes on really scary nights that might hit 32 degrees. I would rather save myself that stress. I already grow food in the winter out in the garden, so letting those things finish up a little bit longer and feeling like I can plant mid to late April and have more of peace of mind that I'm not going to be scrambling to save tomatoes from a possible killing frost. And I have people locally who've bought plant starts from me because they planted out their summer garden too early. They lost all of their starts, and then they were scrambling, asking local people if they had any to share. And so I don't want that to happen to you. Look at your 10-day forecast, look at the average last frost date. Take your own records. Talk to local people in your region about when they're planting out things like peppers, eggplant, tomatoes, all the really frost tender plants. That way you can have the best possible outcome for your plants. We can't control nature. We can't control the weather, but we can give it the very best shot we can. So all this effort and anticipation isn't lost. That's super bummer. It happens, but if we can prevent it, it's worth the try. So I even know people around here who watch the mountains. We've got a big mountain to our west called Shasta Bali in the Trinity Alps. And some people wait for that to not have snow on it. Now, last year, I think it had snow till mid or late June. That was way too late. Temperatures were warm. But it is a good indication if places like that in your area and folklore says to wait till it's not super snowy. I would definitely not be planting when it was completely covered in snow. I would wait for it to look like it's starting to melt. You know what I mean? Like those kind of indications that have been relied on for years and years before there was the internet to look things up, often they have some merit to it. There's people around here, even though our last frost date is supposedly the middle of March, who wait till Mother's Day. That's just their tradition. On Mother's Day, they go out and plant their tomatoes. I don't wait quite that long, but I do see that there's a reason to do it. It's going to be nice and warm. Tomatoes really like warmth. We have such a long growing season. They're really not losing out on a lot of time. And it's a tradition for them, which is something that makes it fun. We like to harvest our garlic right around Father's Day. So when you have like a date or a holiday that reminds you of the timing, often it's helpful to just have a marker to remember things. The next tomatoes I'm going to share with you are ones that are new to me and new to my garden. So they get a spot this year. They're not guaranteed to come back. We'll see how they perform. One I got from Seed Wish Wednesday called Peach Tomato. And this, I looked it up. It sounds really fun. They say it actually has a little bit of a peach flavor. And they say that it's a little bit fuzzy, which is very interesting to me. I don't like the fuzz of peaches. They hurt my lips. I wonder if it would do that with a tomato. I guess we'll have to see and find out. We'll see how this does. The next one is Abraham Lincoln, Buckabee's Abraham Lincoln. Got it from Seeds and Such. I tried this last year, but I tried it in these nursery pots and it did terrible because the black nursery pots cooked my roots and soil. I would water and the water that came out the bottom would be like boiling hot. You never want boiling hot water. So I learned the hard way that when you live in a climate as hot as mine is, black nursery pots are not the way to go in planting extra tomatoes. This year, that Abraham Lincoln is going to have a spot in a garden bed with really good mulch to keep those roots healthy and cool, and we'll see how good tomatoes it produces. I've heard good things about it. I'd like to find out for myself if it's one that deserves a permanent place in my garden or not. Blush tomato. Redwood Seeds is a local company to us. No, I'm not sponsored by them. I just have had great success with their seeds. I actually know the owner. We went to junior high together, lost touch for years and years and years. She owns this company. They are in our climate, they're in our county. Often when you buy seeds that are saved close to you, they might be climatized to your region and do better in your area. So I've had really good success with a lot of her seeds. I'm gonna try these blush tomatoes. They look like a similar size to Brad's Atomic Grape. I think I'm gonna really like them. I'm excited to try these out. Plus they're pretty. I love pretty. You can never go wrong with beauty in the garden. Speaking of beautiful tomatoes, this vintage wine, it's literally the color that drew me to them. I've never tried them. I think they are absolutely beautiful. I love the stripy look when they're green and the stripy look when they're red. And I'm very curious how they taste. They are an heirloom from the 1980s. Guys, are we 80s children considered heirloom now? This next one I've heard really good reviews about. It's from Redwood Seeds. It's called a pineapple tomato. The description is fruity, large, great for sandwiches. I can't wait to try it. I love things that are yellow and orange. You guys know that. It is low acid. Usually orange tomatoes are not low acid, so I'm very curious to try this one, and I will let you know watch future videos. I will let you know what I think about it. I anticipate really liking it. Now, most seed envelopes say to start your tomatoes 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. You need to know what your frost date is. Your last frost date is going to be different than just the gardening zone you're in. Gardening zones more talk about what the lowest average temp that your region gets to. We are 9B, which means the average lowest temp that we get to is 25 degrees. 9A would be 20 degrees. The A and B, it basically goes up by 5-degree increments. That has nothing to do with the last frost date. There are places in Florida that are zone 9B. There are places in Texas that are zone 9B. There's places in Southern California that are zone 9B. They're all very different climates than Northern California. So you want to Google last frost date and enter your zip code. Often it will come up with a Farmer's Almanac link. You click on that, you can actually look up by your zip code. They will give you the average last frost date based on, I think it's about 100 years. Don't quote me on that, it might be less, but it's averaged over a lot of years. So it's more reliable. It's not like just a shot in the dark based on your own garden records, although I do recommend keep your own notes of your last frost date, your first frost date, because the frost date in your garden could vary from someone across town 5-6 miles away. They may have a completely different date. I know that happens here in our area a lot. I got frost. My sister lives about 3 miles from us, and they still have a bell pepper plant that's producing right now in February. My pepper plants are long gone in my garden. So even though we're very close to each other, our own frost in our garden has been different. So once you get that date, you look and you count backwards on your calendar and you find out what is 6 to 8 weeks before that. We will be starting our own tomato seeds at the end of February or start of March. I'm trying to wait till I can be a little bit more helpful to my family. I started all of my pepper seeds early, right before my surgery, because I didn't want to have my husband have to do trays and trays of peppers. He and my kids did help me cup them up. I just wanted to take a little bit of the burden off how much they have to help me with the garden. So I'm trying to wait to see how much I can actually help myself in starting the tomato seeds. I know that starting even at the start of March still helps me reach that mid to late April planting date. And so I feel like it might be the perfect time to start them and not have them get too big and get root bound, outgrow their containers, and have to pot them up. That's one of the dangers of starting seeds too early, is you might have to keep moving them up to larger and larger sizes so that they don't get root bound. If they get root bound, they might have a harder time transitioning to the garden. Now, speaking of transitioning to the garden, one thing you want to remember is if you grow your own plants from seed, you're going to have to do a time period called hardening off. That means you slowly introduce them to the outdoors. They need to be introduced to the sun, to the wind, and you want to start super slow. I actually start all of my seedlings pretty early, even in January, February, March, times when it's over 60 degrees. 15 minutes is all you want to start with. You bring them back in, you check on them. If they're out too long at a time, they could get sunburned. They could start wilting. They aren't used to those different factors that are outside when they're grown inside. I have too many people that I've talked to that are newer gardeners that did not realize they have to build up to 24 hours, including an overnight, before planting, and then their transplants struggled. So please remember that. Often mine will be outdoors for a full 24 hours before I sell them locally to anybody. I want my plant babies to do well in other people's gardens. I don't want them to struggle, especially if they may not know how to harden things off. For myself, they might be outdoors for several days straight before they actually make it into the garden. They're going to be ready. But start at like 15-minute increments. Wait till it's warm enough. You don't want it scalding hot their first time. You don't want it really cold their first time. You want it temperate. It's also nice to have them in either dappled light or in shade to start. I do let mine have direct sunlight at some point, but sometimes it's not the smartest thing to do your very first couple times out. You'll build up maybe 15 minutes, half hour, couple hours. Watch the temps. You don't want them in pouring rain. You don't want them to get flooded. It's nice on a day when it's sprinkling to have them out because plants love the acidity of rainwater. They love it. They thrive. There's not chlorine in it. It's really good for them. But if it's a downpour, that's not good for your plants. You don't want that. Also, having them outdoors may introduce them to some bugs like aphids, or if you're growing brassicas, it might be like cabbage worms. You're gonna have to check the underside of your leaves to make sure there's no pests that you're bringing back indoors that are gonna eat your seedlings. I know that's a lot to process if you're a new gardener. Don't worry about it. You will figure it out. Just remember, slow and steady is the best for your plants. I promised you that I would share at the end my very top choices. You guys, I just listed 30 varieties that I'm gonna have in my garden. Good thing my husband said that he would build me at least one new garden bed this year because I do have room for 30 varieties, but I don't want to just grow one of each. We definitely need to make a little bit more space. Oh my goodness. I love tomatoes way too much. These are my top choices. Cherry tomatoes, Sun Gold. You'll thank me. Paste tomatoes, La Roma. It is a hybrid. It is a huge producer and they're large size paste tomatoes. They're a good size. They are reliable. Unusual varieties. Brad's Atomic Grape. They're like the size of a paste tomato. They are a psychedelic, beautiful color in the garden, have a unusual, delicious flavor. They are a fun, unusual tomato to include in your garden just for the interest alone. Why not try? Orange or yellow variety, Kellogg's Breakfast. I promised you guys I'd let you know something I grew in my very first garden that I would like to always be in my garden, and Kellogg's Breakfast is one of the very first 6 varieties that I grew in that very first garden, and it hooked me from day one. Kellogg's Breakfast, delicious, so good on burgers. We barbecue all summer long. Definitely grow it. I love all those orange ones, but definitely grow it. Purple varieties. Okay guys, this is so hard. I have to say 2. Black Krim, I think, may be my very favorite tomato. And that's hard for me to say. Black Krim, but it's not as big of a producer as Cherokee Purple. And so Cherokee Purple will always be in my tomato garden because I love it in a caprese salad. It is so good. It's worth it, guys. Cherokee Purple, Black Krim. Red, this is hard for me. I would not say that I had one perfect red tomato that I have decided to be a must. So I would say for the heirloom flavor, maybe consider Brandywine, but they're tough. I've lost a lot of Brandywine tomatoes and some years got none from it. That is one I'm trying to find this year. I'm trying to find what is my must grow red variety that needs to be there every year. You guys, thank you for joining me. I love sharing this with you. I will be taking you through growing tomatoes from start to finish. I have other tomato videos on my channel you can look up from last year. And I just am so excited for summer to come. I cannot wait. I love summertime. I love the flavors. I actually don't mind the heat. I love the freedom of the schedule where there's not the structure of school and sports, and we can spend more time outdoors with the long hours of daylight, working in the garden, harvesting the garden, eating fresh, delicious garden food. I hope you are inspired to grow something new, to grow tomatoes if you've never grown them before, to keep growing tomatoes if you got burnt out somehow on them. And please share with me what you are planning to grow, what tomato varieties are going to be included in your 2024 garden. I will talk to you guys soon. Have a beautiful day.